There we go.
All right, let's call this meeting of the District Regional Agreement Subcommittee to order. The time is 6:32 on June 26th.
And we have Kate Belsky, who is our recording secretary, will be taking notes tonight.
So should we start with a quick roll call as to who's here?
See here, Greg.
Here.
I'm here. Stephen. Henman.
Stephen M. with Mars.
Catherine DiMatteo.
I'm here.
Matt Lord.
Present.
Jessica Foote.
Here.
Mac is one of the consultants.
Yes, I'm here.
Dorinda.
Here.
Tupper.
I'm here.
Alan.
Here.
And we have Kate, who is taking notes, and we have who's Aaron is on the call.
Hi, everyone.
And I'm just opening up the agenda that Greg sent out. All right. Looks like we need to approve the minutes of, that's May 22nd. Do we have the agenda for today anywhere?
Yes. It's DRAS CTE agenda 6/26/24.
Great. And now we need to approve the minutes of May 22nd, 2024.
So
I move
moved.
that we approve the minutes of May 22nd, 2024 as presented.
I'll second.
Great. Do we need a roll call vote?
I have, yeah, just to the note taker. Catherine is Catherine with an E, which you got right one place, and then with an A in the second place, and then in the third time you said Kathy, although I'm not sure if that was me or not. So it doesn't, you don't have to correct the minutes now, but for the future, just to have consistent. I'm not three people, although sometimes I can be schizophrenic. So.
And to approve the minutes, do we need to vote on that? Is that a thing?
Yes, yes, you do.
Okay.
Hey, Chris, I just make people aware that Stephen Nestenpower joined the meeting.
Great.
And
I'll
also,
make a
did you
motion.
already announce that the meeting was being recorded and you called the meeting to order at, what time did you call it to
Yes,
order, Chris?
Alan, that's been done. Yeah, we're all set.
Perfect, thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of May 22nd, 2024.
Great. I'll second. And we'll do a roll call vote. Stephen. So that's okay. Sorry, that's a different Stephen. Tupper.
Yes.
Greg.
Yes.
Michelle's not here. Catherine.
Yes.
Dorinda.
Aye.
Matt.
Aye.
I also vote in the positive. Yes. Alan.
Aye.
Jessica.
Aye.
And that is everyone.
Stephen Nestenpower can vote, even if he wasn't there. He can abstain, but he can vote an approval if he's read them.
He's on mute.
Stephen, can you hear us? There he is.
Say that's a constructive abstention.
Stephen, can you hear us? It looks like you went off mute. Are you speaking to us? Because we can't hear you.
Excuse me?
Okay, there you go. Now we can hear you.
Good.
Yeah. You can vote on the minutes to approve them if you've read them and you're fine with them. Otherwise, you can abstain if you feel that.
Since I was not there, I think I would feel more comfortable abstaining.
Okay.
Okay. Moving along, continued discussion of section 2.
Okay, as you probably know, Jay Berry is out of the country, and so I'll be with Steve facilitating the meeting tonight. So we thought we should just go over our process one more time and just take 20 seconds or 30 seconds to make sure everybody is clear that what this committee is going to do. And we'll look at each section, and we think we have the consensus. We'll take a straw vote or a vote, preliminary vote, and do that with each section as we go along. At the end of the process, we'll go back and look at everything, and everybody can see how it all fits in when obviously you're voting on things sort of independently, and you can look at the big picture and take one more vote. That final vote will be a recommendation to the 6-town member planning board. They will look at it. They can make changes in it if they want. They can accept it as it is. Eventually, they will vote to approve some kind of a regional agreement, and they will start sending that to the select boards and to the school committees and start communicating with your communities. So our job is to recommend something to the 6-town planning board, which we've started to do. So tonight we have a very important task. This is one of the more difficult tasks of the whole regional agreement. For any of you who might have been on the Heart Committee, I know Alan was, when we got to section 2 there for the Pioneer Valley, we probably only spent an hour on it because there was no changing of school committee members, the number, or how they were elected. So it was very simple. But since this is a new region, it's important that people feel like they're going to be well represented and fairly represented. And so that's what we're doing. So tonight we're going to go through that process, but you'll need to first decide on which option you want of those 5 options. Secondly, need to decide on total number of school committee members. And thirdly, you'll need to decide on how many school committee members from each community. So I think the process that we have, we can get to that. And I think you'll find that once we get beyond section 2, things will go a little more quickly and we'll be able to move along. So Greg, could I ask you to call up the election scenarios document, please?
Chris,
Yep.
I have my hand up there. Maybe I didn't, Chris?
Yep.
Okay to speak?
Alan?
Okay. Yeah, I just want to throw out some present thinking that I had the last couple of days. I'm thinking that that it might be prudent, and that still is soft in my thinking, that when we come to some areas like the assessment methodology and so forth, that it might make sense to have I don't know what we call it, a splinter subcommittee, or some people from here and some from the full committee, but get together. We had an all-town meeting where we pulled people together from each of the towns. And I'm wondering if that would be a prudent time to pull together several of those, financial gurus from each town when we get to that assessment, to look at the assessment methodologies, how you would assess towns for transportation, maybe even have one of the business administrators, kind of sit in and offer any suggestions as we go, because they're just, so steeped living and breathing this, that it might not only save some time, but have them come to a consensus on that aspect of the regional agreement, because it's so important, rather than, we go through it, we go to the planning board, and then we go out, and they were sort of, on the most important part, didn't sort of have a voice on how to shape that. So I just want to put that out there, that I might want to modify a little bit what Mac has just presented on that financial piece. And I'm open to feedback at some other point, not during this meeting, but I'd like to hear your thoughts if that makes sense. So that said, I didn't want to miss that opportunity to bring it out, and just put it out there. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to think through that a little bit more. I'm sure other people would as well.
Yeah.
So maybe let's get back to the agenda for now.
Okay, you asked us to be able to discuss a little bit about each of the scenarios. And so that's what our goal is here. So option one is that every school committee member gets a full vote, but they also need to represent the same number of constituents as all other school committee members, at least within that 10% range. And we've done the calculations of school committees all the way from 10 up to 23 and have determined that the number 23 is the smallest school committee that would work under this option one. So Greg, could I ask you to put up that other chart, bring this down and put up the chart with the two charts on it, I guess. I think it will be helpful if we go back and forth between these two documents. So as we look at option one.
Hey, can you just give me I've got like 5 documents here. Can you give me the
Oh, it's called, I'm sorry.
election? No.
Election of school committee members, I think it is.
Okay. All right. Sure. I will share that one now. I got to stop sharing this one. Is that okay? I
Yes,
can't
please.
share them at the same time. Okay.
No, that's good.
Okay. So let me call up the other one.
We have a chart for both option one and option four.
Is this it? Is this
Yes.
Okay.
Great. You can scroll up.
Okay.
Scroll down, I guess. So I'll try to go through this quickly, and you can certainly ask any questions that you would like. So there are 16,613 people who live in your 6 towns. If there were 23 school committee members, you'll see on the 3rd column there, each school committee member would have to represent 722 people, or approximately that. So going back to the top of the chart, looking at Bernardston, they have a population of 2,102. That represents 12.7% of the total 16,613. Okay, are we all together so far?
Mhm.
All right, so 12.7% of total of 23 school committee members would give Bernardston 3 school committee members. So we'll do just one other. Let's look at Montague. They have 8,580 population, which is 51.6% of the total population. 51.6% of 23 is 12. And so they would get 12 school committee members in this scenario. One issue, as you can see there, is that Montague under this scenario would have a majority of the school committee. So they would have 12 out of the 23 members, and therefore really could dictate what happens on the school committee. Another issue with this, and you'll see the deviations from 100% over on the right. So Bernardston, let's see, I calculated that Bernardston, just the 12.7% really deserve 2.9 school committee members. But under this scenario, as we know, every school committee member has to be a full vote. So that's why it says 103%. So those 3 members are representing a little less than their 722 members. And you can see that Montague, if we use that example, they have would have 12. They're very close to what they should have to represent, to be within the 10%. So again, 23, we believe, is the lowest number of least number of school committee members that you could use in this scenario. And even then, you'll see that the deviation from the highest of 103% at Berniston and 93% at Gill is 10%. So if the population started shifting between your communities, then even this scenario would not work. So, is there any, first of all, before I go to option 2, any questions about that?
Matt has his hand up.
Okay, Matt.
So I appreciate this breakdown. This is exactly what I was hoping that we could see to understand what was feasible. I really appreciate the work. My question regards specifically Montague, because I agree with you. Montague having 12 members and a 23 member board would create difficulties. If they were at 11, the way that we would figure it out would be taking 11 times 722 and then dividing that by the town population to see if that fits the rounded percentage. Is that correct?
Yes. So would you change the total school committee by 1 or add that to someplace else?
I would just subtract it. So it would be, I changed the total school committee to 22. If Montague was at 11, 11 times 722 is 7942. Divided by 8580, I came up with 0.9256, and it goes on. So if I have the methodology correct, it appears as though Montague at 11 would be feasible within the 10% deviation.
I would want to review that in my mind too, or look at it, do it on paper. But yes, that could work. So then the question is, would you want 22 school committee members?
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
I think we need to go back and take a look at that before we can give you an answer.
I'm not
Okay?
sure that would work, because you'd have to recalculate all the other towns in terms of their
Right.
percentages. It would shift
Right.
the percentages of everyone
Yes,
else.
absolutely correct.
That's how that goes. Okay, yeah, it was Jane had done some math the last time around that came at 22, and I did test that at one point in time and thought it worked out, but I'll see if I can find my math, but let's move forward. Thank you.
Yep, be happy to do that.
Mr. Chairman, one of the things I would point out with a 22 or 23, it means you got to get like 11, 12 people for a quorum. And that could be kind of difficult as you go on, trying to get that large a number for a quorum. Just to let you know, I've seen problems in the past where large committees, when they have to have a large quorum, it's sometimes difficult to get the quorum.
Alan, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just from experience at Mohawk, who had 24, then 18. I 20 in, for what my experience, 22, 23 would be too large to be efficient and not only just their membership, but in getting things to move along. That's been my experience. So something smaller than that, I think, would work a lot better.
right.
Mr. Chairman, may I say something?
Go ahead, Stephen.
Yes, I look at these statistical analyses based on population, and in this current form, you are setting up a Montague autocracy. They can outweigh, they can vote out everything that does not displease them. I believe, and as a member of PVRS, where Northfield has always been the biggest brother on the block, I wish we could look at some other formula or method not solely derived from population.
Thank you.
As long as theoretically the greatest number of stakeholders has the power to quote unquote rule, the smaller towns will always be a second class citizen.
I
That's my
appreciate that perspective.
observation.
I want to just say something that what we're looking at right here are a bunch of different scenarios with different calculations, and we're looking at the strengths and weaknesses
No,
of the different scenarios. And
and
frankly, this one
I
think
understand that, but this makes me very nervous. I'm sorry.
Right. And just to be clear, I think that the Mars consultants have been dissuading us from this model. I think that's fair to say. And we're looking at it just to make sure we understand it before we move on. I don't think, yeah, just to put that out there.
Mr.
The
Chairman,
analogy.
excuse me, Mr. Jim, we have 5 options, so if we could go through the options and then maybe go back and look at these things, I think, Stephen, you might find it would relieve you of your concern with this particular model. There are 5 ways that you can then, one person, one vote, be in compliance on your school committee membership. So I would suggest, could we go through these and then have that discussion?
Greg, could we go back to the previous, show the previous document, please? Great, let's go down to number 2. Okay, this is district-wide elections, and you and the regional planning board will just determine how many school committee members that you want, and that could be any number in this scenario. All the names will be listed on all the ballots in all the towns that we've talked about last time, and whoever gets the most votes from total votes are the people who are going to be elected. Obviously, the big disadvantage here is that it's possible that the majority of the school committee members could be from 2 or 3 towns. And conversely, it could be that a smaller town might not even have any member, because in this scenario, you're not designated how many school committee members are supposed to be from each town. It's just the total popular vote, and that's who gets elected. So any questions on this one?
Alan, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I would like to just suggest, Chris, that this is not palatable. I don't think it would be for anyone. So we not spend any time on data. We just move on to the next one.
That's good.
Okay, number 3. This is similar to number 2, but it has, as you know, residency requirements, and that's what you both have right now. Again, this regional agreement is going to determine the total number of school committee members, but it will also specify how many members for each town. We have an example there that I'll get to later. So whoever gets the most votes in each town is determined by how many school committee members they will get. That's who will get on the school committee. So that's just an example. If there were 13, you could just designate that. And so the 2 people in Bernardston who have the highest vote in Bernardston would be elected. The 2 people in Gill with the highest vote would be elected. So it's pretty much exactly what you're doing right now.
Sorry, Dorinda has her hand up.
I think this is very reasonable. Some people had concerns that they wouldn't know people who were running necessarily if they were from a different town, but we have over 8,000 people, so I don't necessarily know everybody who's running personally, but this can be solved by a candidate statement. We can have candidate statements in the reporter and in the recorder and online. And, I think no town necessarily special interest. We're all paying tax, we're paying a similar student. So I think a lot of us are in the same boat, just that can really allay people's concerns, the opportunity to have a statement.
Stephen, did you have something to say?
Yeah, it was referring to me. One of the things, this is, I believe, both in Pioneer and in Gilmontague, you do have with district-wide elections residency requirement. And it's also, I would add that you now have the elections, and I think you do it now at the November elections every 2 years. Usually it's a 4-year term, so they have 4 years and then they come up again. And you would stagger those people when you have multiple membership. So I think this is similar to what you're doing now on district-wide election with residency requirement.
Did Stephen Nestenpower have something to say?
No, I find this much more balanced than the first two. At least there is no tyranny of someone who can completely overwhelm the school committee. And that to me appeals to me. I think this is more democratic, if I could use that word.
Alan, you had your hand up?
Yeah, so just a couple things. I agree with the last statement that Steve said. The thing that we want this to pass, and this is something that the towns are familiar with. And also, I don't want to get lost in the conversation of numbers, that school committee members that run for that are representing, and I think Dorinda was saying this a little bit, they're representing all of the kids from all of the towns. So although they have a vote and they're representing their town, they're really in concert with that, representing the best interests of all of the kids. So I don't want to have that get lost in our conversation. I like this option because I think it's palatable. I think it's what people are used to. And I think at least this aspect of it would seem fair and people could support this part of the regional agreement. Thank you.
Greg, you had your hand up?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I would agree with Alan. I think this is something, I mean, we're looking for something that is politically feasible. Stephen pointed out the issue of if a town, kind of went on the warpath, which I don't necessarily think that would happen, but there is always that risk of, overwhelming the vote and having, more than the majority. But the other thing that, Chris, you had a proposal last time in the last meeting, which I thought I would be okay with as well, which I think added, a vote to Montague and one to Northfield to balance it out a little bit more in terms of the populations, which I think is okay. I think that the other towns would still be okay with a, Montague at 6 and Northfield at 3. And the rest staying the same. I think that would still be okay. And having 15 members on your school committee is really not a big deal if we're going for 13. So I think, this is something that's doable and people can understand it. The other thing I would just mention is that, it's hard to fit people to the math, which is kind of what you're going to see in scenario 4. And it's just easier for people to understand when you're fitting the math to the people. It's just, for consistency and understanding how the votes play out, I think it's just going to be so much easier. So that's enough said on my part. Thanks.
Copper, you had your hand up?
Yeah, in looking at this one, I was remembering one time in Gill where my wife Sandy and I elected, just the two of us, elected a school committee member because there was a open space for which no one was a candidate, and thus a write-in. And we wrote in a name, and that person got elected. That strikes me as not a terribly healthy situation. And also it has to do with, what you know about the people on the school committee. And I don't know if anybody's thought about this, but I'm wondering if some thought somewhere down the road should be given to requiring that only people who actually are willing to run and present their positions and their their EVs and so forth should be on the school committee, and not people who get on by a miscellaneous write-in vote of as little as 1 or 2 people.
Stephen?
I would just suggest that you can't do that. If the election laws state people can do it right in, and you couldn't do anything against that. That's federal and state law. So unfortunately, that could not happen. The requirement is you have to be a citizen in your district, in a particular one, and 3 citizen in a particular community. So you couldn't put anything like that in the regional agreement.
I'll share my opinion of this methodology. Seems to be the kind of best compromise all around. I will echo what Greg said about fitting the numbers into the math. You have to either round up or round down one particular town's representation. I think adding 1 to Montague and 1 to Northfield to bring the total to 15, I think would round Gill down slightly, and because in this 13 member scenario, Gill is rounded up slightly. So Alan, did you have a, oh, it's a thumbs up.
No, I agree. I just agree with that. I think that solves several issues. It also has a committee that can be functional. Because I saw when it got too big, it doesn't become functional.
Greg, your hand is still up. Did you mean to have it up?
Yeah, because I'm sharing, I'm having a hard time figuring out how to lower my hand.
Yeah, me too. How do I get this thing down? Oh, there we go.
Well, let's let Brenda, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I think this is a little stronger than the modification suggestion, because aren't Bernardston, Leiden, and Northfield used to having equal share in their school committee? So then it would become, 3-2-1 instead of 2-2-2 or whatever it is, right? Or do I have the numbers wrong for the current makeup? I can look that up. But I know Leiden was very concerned about 1, so yeah, I don't know. And then maybe this is something that has to be negotiated, especially at the end.
Greg, I would suggest we go down and do the last 2, and then we can come back and focus on what people want to focus on. So,
Sorry, this is, Catherine, I'm going to jump in because for some reason, Zoom has updated my, my program, and I no longer can raise my hand. But so anyway, and Chris, you'll have to watch for me waving my arm around. But just to the Dorinda's comment about, and we would be okay with 1, one member. We have 2 now, and we can't get a third. It's been very difficult for us to get. I have a feeling we're going to have trouble getting replacements for the 2 that are on currently for Pioneer. We don't have people stepping up, and I'm all right with either the breakout, changing Northfield and Montague a little bit and rearranging the numbers. So I can go with 13 or 15 but I also like option 5, which we haven't gotten to yet. And I know that's not the democratic process, but that for me feels like it would be more doable, especially for our town.
Let's move on to option 5.
okay, so option.
Did we cover option 4 yet?
No, we have not.
Actually, Greg, could I ask you to go back to the chart? I don't know, the chart document, the other document. Stop sharing this. And the second one really illustrates what would how you would work with the weighted votes. There you go. Okay, so it's basically the same chart, the same percentage each town has of the population. But again, this committee could choose how many members you would want. Could be 10, could be 13, could be 15, whatever you choose. And then it becomes an exact mathematical science. So in this case, with 13 school committee members, if you look at Berniston has 12.7% of the population. 12.7% of 13 school committee members is 1.64. So if that gets rounded up to two members, each of them would get 0.82 of a vote. You can see it's a little complicated, and there are districts who use that, and the clerical person at the meetings has to have a calculator there. But from what I've been told from most places, they don't have to, it doesn't have to be used very much. But so in this case, each school committee member would represent exactly the same number of constituents as every other school committee member. That's the fairness of it. It's obviously a lot more complicated. So,
Did you have a question?
Yes.
Yes, but I was back on the third option. I just wanted to comment that increasing the membership of Montague and Northfield would have the effect of diluting the strength of the other contingents at the school committee. And I'm not sure that's a good thing from their point of view. For instance, Leiden and Gill and Warwick and Berniston, they have only 2 members anyway. And that's a smaller number out of 15 than it is out of 13. And I want to add my comment to those who have said that the committee should not be any larger than it has to be. 13 is a pretty large committee as it is. And I wouldn't make it any larger if we can avoid it.
Alan?
Yeah, again, I'll just keep it simple. I dealt with a weighted vote for 7 years, and it is complicated when it gets to something really important. And in talking to members before we change this and eliminate it and reduce the size of the committee, it doesn't feel good for members to cast their vote and then it gets calculated, and it is plausible that you get a majority of people that vote one way and it doesn't pass, and they're supporting it. So it just didn't feel right, and I was the one that was crunching all the numbers all the time, and I just didn't feel it was a very efficient way to do business, and people should have an equal vote when they're sitting at the table. That was my opinion, and that's what was expressed to me. That's all. Thank you.
Greg?
Yeah, hey, Tupper, one thing to look at in this chart is to see that the mathematical distribution, which is an exact science in this particular sheet or spreadsheet that we're looking at here, this table, is that Gill, technically would only have 1 vote in a 13 member. So that's what Chris was pointing out, that if you move to 15 and increase Montague from 5 to 6, you'd be getting a little closer to, Gill would still have 2 votes with that. So in the scenario the first scenario with 13, Gill already has a little bit more than they should do in terms of the exact mathematical distribution. So, and then you'll notice that, Warwick is also at 1 and Bernardston would remain at 2. So not a whole lot would be changing in that, but I mean, you're right, there would be a little bit of dilution, but the dilution for Gill would not really be a huge factor, because in that particular instance with 13, it already has a little bit of an outsized vote. So just throwing that in there.
Yeah, it does
Let's
have
hear
a
from let's hear from, oh, sorry, Tupper, let's hear from you after we hear from Kathy and then Stephen Nessenpower.
Okay, thanks. I figured out where my hand was. For Leiden, we just would not accept, this is an unacceptable option for us. I mean, and I don't know if anybody's here from Warwick. You know, to have less than a vote, a full, you know, weight in the vote is just not going to work for us. I mean, we're willing to go down to have one representative, but not to give up, not to go down to half a vote.
Stephen Nessenpower?
Yes, thank you. I believe this is a wolf in lamb clothing. This is no better than one because the statistical probability that all the other towns, the 7 votes, would ever be able to get together to overrule Montague, you're setting this up again as a overwhelming establishment of potentially self-seeking autocratic rule. No way, Jose. Maybe I sound like a broken record, but for so long of our school districts and in the representation of the school committees have been ruled by the bigger towns, overruling and overpowering the smaller towns. Come on, guys, let's try to figure out something outside the same old, and try to get a more equitable system where size isn't the only thing that matters. We're supposedly a democracy, and I believe there has to be a great equality in representation. Size can't be the only ruling factor. I'm sorry. We're going to go round and round and round and round, and we keep coming back, trying to sugarcoat something that is inequitably unfair. Thank you.
Thank you. Mac?
I would just comment that the only districts that we have seen that have used this method only had 2 towns, and it can work. I guess we tried it in one town that was had more town, one district that had more than one town. And what we did there, let's say Leiden has 0.57 of a vote, we would raise that up to 1, and then proportionally raise all the others up at the same proportion, so that the smallest town would at least have 1 full vote. So there is a way to do that, but I don't think we probably ought to spend a lot more time on this.
No, but at risk of doing so, I wanted to weigh in here. I don't think this is attractive from a kind of getting it passed standpoint, like a political appetite standpoint. But the main reason for that, I think, is just the less than 1 vote aspect. In the video game industry, what they'll do in that situation is add some zeros to the number of votes, so it just seems like a higher number, and then that kind of solves that problem. But take that with a grain of salt. I think we should move on to the other option.
Agreed.
Okay, Greg, could you stop sharing that, and we'll go back to the other document to just look at number 5 quickly. So as Catherine said, this is a very different option, and that is to have some elected official or elected board select the school committee members, and that would often be the select board. This, as I think we've said in the past, we believe only happens with vocational schools where there might be 7, 8, 10, 15 towns going to the same school. So each town gets one school committee member, and that person is elected or selected by the select board. I don't think we've seen this done in a regular regional school district, but obviously it's one of the options that can be used.
Alan, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I could not support this because it just flies in the face of the principles of a democratic process of the constituents, the parents, the community who would like to weigh in on who's going to represent the town. I do understand the logic behind it in terms of having like the Board of Selectmen, appoint someone. The problem is that one person has to try to represent a multitude of different views, and that doesn't weigh out correctly, in my opinion. Over the years, we've had in my town, we've had some pretty good select board members. We've had some that, well, could have been better. It's too much power put into the hands of too few, and that's not what I don't think that would pass. I think that this alone could defeat anything on town meeting floor to pass with the parents going, oh, okay, I have no voice in this. It's to me, it's dead in the water. So I have a problem with it, but I do understand the logic behind it. So that's it.
Thank you. Greg?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo the same concerns. I mean, I've been on the select board for over 10 years now, and I am an educator, and I personally wouldn't want that power. I just think it removes an important part of the democratic process especially for families to educate themselves in what's happening. If we want our electorate educated in what's going on, especially in their school systems, because they do take a pretty active role and interest in that. And that, if it all of a sudden gets turned over to select board members, and sometimes you end up with, 3 select board members that are all in their 70s and have been removed from the school systems forever, and don't necessarily have, families in there. And, maybe I don't want to be ageist. I'm not, I'm a lot closer to 60 than I am to 50 at this point. So I'm including myself in some of this. So, I think it's really important to allow representation to be voted by the public, and select board members aren't always the best place to be consolidating that power. So thanks.
Thank you. Catherine?
Thank you. First of all, Greg, being someone who's in their 70s, doesn't mean that I don't know a thing about education, nor that I don't have grandchildren or other, associated people who in the school system. But that is a very ageist comment, and we're going to hear a lot of that over the next few months up to the election. So anyway, being on the select board, and I understand both of the points that have been made about it. What we in Leiden, and again, it might be because we're a very small town, we've moved a lot of our formally elected positions to appointed positions. And one of the reasons that that's been supported by the people in town is because we usually end up with a description, a job description, or a responsibility description, a criteria for skill set description, and then actually interview and make a decision based not just, oh, I like so-and-so, or I know so-and-so has a child in school or a grandchild in school, and that, I'll go approach them. We have tried and have been successful at having a much more open process with our appointments, and those are done at open meetings. Obviously open meetings, and anybody in town can come. And we've done we've been really attempting to ensure that people get warning well in advance, so that if there's a topic on our discussion or decision for us, it would be open for the public to come and also have a comment. So that's just why, from our point of view, this is appealing. We currently have 2 members, one who was a former educator and now has no children, and another one who has no children in the school and was never an educator. And, they've both been on for forever. And I'm not sure how well they represent, all those people with families that actually have students who go to the school. So, I'll go with whatever the majority opinion is, but those are at least some of my reasonings for making appointments meaningful and effective. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's hear from Mac and then Matt, and then I think I saw Stephen Nessenpower raise his hand. So let's start with Mac.
I was going to suggest, Chris, that maybe a straw vote would help us narrow it down, and then there could be more discussion on whatever you narrow it to. But if Matt has another question or comment before then, but we need to get it narrowed down to decide where we're going with this.
Matt, did you have anything to add?
Having heard Catherine make her statement and everybody behind me, I would just like to make a motion that we adopt option 3 residency requirement in district-wide elections with a board of 13 as presented.
I think we need to say that we're tentatively accepting that.
That would be for a tentative acceptance for that. Thank you.
Does anyone second that?
Second.
All right, let's roll call vote.
We can have discussion first if we like.
Discussion. Anybody have anything they want to say about that?
Should we have a vote on your
Yes,
amendment
I would like to say
within there?
something, please.
Sorry, who was speaking?
Dorinda had spoken first, just asking if we, in terms of your amendment, if we wanted to vote in your amendment or not for the 6-3, or if we do that after.
No, I beat him to it. My motion.
Okay, well, yeah, keep this one, whatever.
Catherine, in discussion of this motion?
No, my question was the same as whether or not Matt wanted to change the numbers for the different towns. But if he's saying no, he's saying as it's presented, okay, I get it. Thank you.
I think that I liked Mac's idea of just narrowing it to this option and keeping the door open for some further discussion on it. So that's my opinion. Stephen Nessenpower?
Yes, I have an observation. Like Greg, I'm a retired educator, and I was a second career educator where I began first in public administration. I have an MPA in it, and looking at all these 5 options brings me back to remembering that this republic has never had one man, one vote. We are dictated by our electoral college. What we're doing here is looking at something similar that robs every person of equal voice in this new district. How can we, in good faith, knowing that this country was founded on disequality, keep on doing the same thing, revising, but basically establishing the tyranny of the big guy? I find this very upsetting. Thank you.
Just a quick statement. I think that we should, thank you for your statements. We should keep things focused on kind of the materials here and what's before us. Matt?
Well, I am, and I'm giving you my feedback that what we are doing is perpetuating the myth of the equal representation.
Thank you.
Tell me, can anyone statistically prove with number 3 how many times the other towns will find it convenient enough to overrule Montague? Why are we so afraid to have one man, one vote? Because we've never had it? This is what, I mean, some of the silliest countries have it. What are we afraid of? I'm sorry. I'll shut up.
You had your hand up, Matt?
Thank you.
Excuse me?
Stephen, I'm sorry. I thought that I had misunderstood. I must have misunderstood your prior statements. My understanding was that out of all of the options presented, option 3 you had found to be most favorable. However,
Yes.
I do want to reply to the substance of what you said, because I do think that what you said there is important. I certainly agree that the history of this country does not lend itself to true democratic ideals. However, this particular option does, I think, represent some of the best democratic ideals in terms of how the constituency of the proposed school committee would reflect the populace and what they are. The reality of the situation is that Montague is a far larger town than most of the other towns. And so in order to provide a representation for the additional people that live in Montague, there are more people represented on the board by Montague by everybody. If you were to move to a more flat horizontal type of committee, what would be happening is each individual on Montague would be representing a larger proportion of people in the district, thereby, in one manner of speaking, taking away from their power as one citizen with one vote. So there are multiple ways through which you can view this. And I just, having heard all of the discussion today and in prior committee meetings, and hoping that we could move to a quick resolution on this, it had been my understanding that certainly this option, and if not this option, this particular numerical representation is something that I had heard the majority of members, and I thought I had heard you say as well, were had found acceptable.
Alan?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to make a motion that we accept option 3 with the following amendment, which would add 1 additional member to Montague and 1 additional member to Northfield, so that Montague would have 6, Northfield would have 3, the others would remain the same.
Chris, would I say that is an amendment to Matt's motion? Is that correct?
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry. When I lost the internet, I didn't realize there was a motion on the floor.
So we're discussing that right now. I believe we discussed it. I think Go ahead.
Alan just needs to be informed that there was already a motion to accept option 3 as it exists from Matt Lord, who's from Montague. So he put it forward, okay?
All right, and my motion wasn't seconded, so be it. Thank you.
Yeah, I would just rescind your motion if I were you.
Well, I don't have to, it wasn't seconded.
Right, okay, there we go.
Does anyone want to move to vote on this?
Yes, that's what we do next.
All right. Okay,
Roll call.
roll call coming up.
Can you take this off the screen again so we can see each other, please, Greg?
Stephen Nessenpower,
No.
Tupper Brown,
Yes.
Greg Snedeker,
Yes,
Catherine D. Mateo,
No,
Dorinda Bell Up,
Aye.
Matt Lord.
Yes.
I vote yes. Alan,
Aye.
that's it. Does anybody count that?
Jessica?
Myself too.
Oh,
I'm a
Jessica.
yes. Yep.
Jessica, sorry about that.
That's okay. Yes.
7-2.
All right, so that is carried, right? Is that the word?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you.
All right, let's, so we are accepting that. Is there any, do we have anything else to discuss about that? Or, okay,
We could go to section 2 and go through that. Can you call that up, Greg? Section 2?
and forgive me, is this a new document or and if so, you have the name of it, section, oh, here it is. Do you want section 2.4 or section 2.9? What is this? Here, I'll call this one up. Let's see if we can get that one going. Hold on. One second.
Great.
Is this okay?
Yes, that's great. Thank you.
Okay.
So we were just to put some numbers in here. I guess those numbers will be correct then if there are going to be 13 school committee members, and your regional agreement will state exactly how many from each town is in number 1. Number 2 is just about a quorum. Pretty typical. Number 3, just saying that the school committee is going to have all the powers that are given to them by the law and by this agreement. It's pretty typical. Number 4, we've added some language there, which is, I'm surprised it's not in the HART agreement, which is pretty much in every other agreement that we've seen. The committee can appoint a treasurer and a secretary, but those 2 positions do not have to be members of the school committee. So that's the law, and that's pretty typical that there are support people that do those 2 jobs that aren't members of the school committee.
And Mac, I would like to just add one thing. The treasurer cannot be the business administrator or an assistant superintendent for business. They cannot be the treasurer for the district. That is by law.
Right.
Okay, if there are no further, can you scroll up, down, please, or up, whichever the case may be. So the elections, just as at the biennial election, which is what you're doing now, is number 1. Okay, now here's number 3 has been deleted. And there was some discussion on this in the past, and it probably will elicit some discussion here. In the Pioneer Valley and Hart agreement, there's a term limit stated in there. This is very unusual. You certainly can have that in there, but we don't really see that in any other agreements. Obviously, someone, if they did 2 terms, which is 8 years, and they could go off a year and they could get, if they could get reelected, they could start again. But there would need to be an interruption of at least a year between long-term serving on the school committee. So I think, Chris, maybe we should entertain if there are any questions about that, or we can move on.
Questions about term limits? Kathy?
Thank you. In our discussion at Pioneer about our new district agreement, we are still supportive of the term limits, and I believe that maybe it's healthy to have new people coming on the board, on the committee, periodically, and if they wish to, rerun after having a year off, or 2 years off, whatever the case may be, that that should be kept in there because they have experience and knowledge that they can share. But it's to have someone on for 8 years and then, or 12 or 16 or 20, and often a kind of, back to Stephen's language of before, of power, power's built in to the people who are on a board for a long time, because and if their relationship with district administrators, if they also happen to have been there for a long time, there's just too cordial a relationship, or a tense relationship, which is not healthy either way. So I'm inclined to support term limits, and as I said, the Pioneer discussion of our district agreement is also leaning towards keeping term limits in there.
Cuthbert?
You're muted.
I also would support term limits, partly for the concern about accumulation of power and influence, but also because I think many organizations have term limits because they desire infusions from time to time of fresh blood and fresh interest and new ideas. Organizations can get very stale, and term limits is a very good way to offset that. So I would support term limits here.
Alan?
Yeah, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I because I was opposed to this at one point, but I actually I think that this is a nice safeguard. I do agree with both what Catherine and Tupper are saying. You become part of the institution, and you have the relationship that forms friendships that and that's fine, but sometimes it can be, okay, you support this, I'll support that, and it gets more into people's personalities rather than what's in the best interest of kids. I'm not saying that's always the case, but that, to me, that's eliminated when you have term limits, and you do have fresh ideas. You do have not this relationship that it's just natural to form if you have school committee members and administration that are there for a while. It's too much of the same, think alike logistics or of ideas. So I could go either way, but I certainly could support that without a problem. Thank you.
Matt, before we get to you, can I ask Mac a question about how rare is it to see term limits in a document like this?
It's very rare.
Okay, Matt.
Nonetheless, I will also speak in favor of this. My original concern was whether or not this would create issues about filling vacancies. However, thinking on my current service in the select board, it's my understanding a lot of times people are like, well, I don't need to do that because somebody else is on that job right now, and so I don't need to step up. And I honestly believe that putting term limits on the school committee could engender more interaction, not just better interaction of the type that Alan describes, where you have you don't get into patterns of relationships, but that you could get a wider breadth of individuals. It would be a necessity than otherwise, and I do believe we live in a place where that would happen. And I may be silly to say that, but I sure hope so.
Mac?
I wonder, Chris, if we could take another straw vote on this, and so then we can move on.
Yeah, I had similar concerns to Matt, but I guess I'm moved by hearing people's support of it. So yeah, it sounds good to me.
Or maybe you could just ask if anybody is opposed to leaving it in there, and then we can move on.
You could do a quick thumbs up and thumbs down, and we could just go on from there.
Right.
All right. Looks like.
Well, I only have one comment, if I may, which is I understand the advocacy for term limits, but what I don't know is, I know the other side of it, which is, we have term limits if people are voted off. But what I'd like to hear from like either Mac or Stephen to, what are there other political issues that we haven't discussed or thought about that, sway towns to not move in that direction, just so that we know, because I'm kind of fine either way, but I'm just curious.
My recollection is that when we were doing the Hart agreement, that there was some history there at Pioneer of a person, or maybe more than one person, that there was concern about, had been on the committee for such a long time. And this was in reaction to that specific instance. So Alan, you may be able to respond to that.
I'm more interested in what sways. I mean, if it's so rare, why with these kind of concerns, why is it so rare? I mean, what is swaying towns to not have term limits? That's
Yeah, I could respond a little bit to that. Part of it is cited earlier, is getting people to run. In the last 5 years, 10 years, we've seen it. Trying to get people to run for the offices sometimes is difficult because there is a commitment to be made. And some people trying to get somebody to run on that. Someone that's been on, say, for 8 years, they're willing to stay on, they can't get anybody else. What do you do? So that's why that would be not to have the term limit. When we were doing this before, if there was concern somebody's on there and they're on there too long, a term limit would stop them from continuing on forever. So again, it depends. If there's been a history in your particular region, then they would want it in. It hasn't been, then it wouldn't be there.
And yet I would add one more thing, Greg. It's not that other committees or other districts have considered that and kept it out. It's just that was not in the original agreements that were originally written back in the 50s and 60s. And so I think most districts haven't even thought about it.
If it hasn't been a problem, then they don't need to do it. It only has been a problem.
Yeah, so I'll just put my hand down because that was my point. I think it was something they hadn't thought about. It wasn't in original agreements, and these were sort of cookie cutter things that just kept coming along. So unless there was a reason to come to their attention to put it in, it just wasn't on their radar screen. Right. I think we've learned over years that could be a really healthy thing to do to help encourage people to run, because I do think that's true, that whoever made the comment, when you have an incumbent in there, people just say, well, I don't want to run, someone's there, I don't want to run. But when there's an opening, I think more interest peaks because they don't want to run against somebody that's been there for 4 years. They can always run again, but I think it's healthy to do this. And so I've changed my mind about this. I was on the Heart Committee when this went in, and I just think overall it's a healthy thing to do. That's
Right.
it.
I think some of the concern about long-term people is solved by rotating chairs and not necessarily term limits. I think sometimes the same chair can sort of keep the agenda as is for a long time as opposed to, so I don't think it necessarily needs to happen here. Rotation is good, especially of the positions within the committee.
Let's hear from Tupper and then Stephen Nestenpower.
Yeah, I just want to add that I think there are some people who are familiar with the history in Montague who would say that term limits would have been a great help there some years ago. I don't want to go any further about that, but it was quite remarkable.
Stephen?
Yes, I'm a great supporter of term limits. Again, I don't want to be negative, but all we have to do is look at our federal government and the dysfunction caused by the tyranny of seniority. And my gut tells me that part of the problem that fewer people are willing to run is because not of commitment fear, but because of, again, this long-term relationships between committee members and a feeling of impotency if they go on and you know, what are they going to be able to do? So I think definitely we need to have some form of new blood infusion onto this committee. And you know, I don't think if you serve 8 years, I think you've done a lot. I think it's time to give someone else a chance. Can't be static all the time. Thank you.
I'll remark that it sounds like the support for it outweighs the opposition. I don't know if we need to vote on having this added back in because we're going to vote on the tentative approval of the whole section. Procedurally, what are we doing there, Mac?
I think that's fine. I think you from the majority, certainly there. If and people can express a concern when we do our vote at the end of the whole section, which we're almost there. So let's look at vacancies. If you scroll up there, is just a definition of vacancies, and also it tells you how that vacancy will be filled, and that's by the select board of that town, and the remaining school committee members of that town would get together and acting jointly select someone until the end of that term. So that's a pretty common process to allow the select board to be involved in that as well. And then the last part in red has been added because I'll first say that the DESE has asked us to add it. And it just is saying that if there's a vacancy, that all, in your case, all the other 5 towns should be notified that there's going to be a group of the select board and school committee members of that one town are going to appoint somebody for that position, just for communication purposes.
The reason for that is because it's district-wide elections, and that's why they want to insist to putting that in. So we've put that in another agreement, and that has been approved by DSC.
Kathy?
So if there are no other questions, I think Chris,
Kathy's hand is up, and then
okay.
mine.
All
Yeah,
right.
thank you. Thank you, Chris. I'm wondering how it's going to work or if the language just has to be changed. Because there's now a number of us towns that only have one committee member. So if the appointment is going to be made by the select board and the remaining committee members from that town, it doesn't work if the one committee member is leaving for whatever reasons. I think it's just a language addition, or some other way to resolve that, the situation that we've just also decided on, which is the number of votes, the number of committee members, excuse me, per town. Thank you.
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman, I could answer that question for you. What you could do is we could put language in there, the remaining committee members, unless there's only one member of the committee, then it'll be solely by the selectmen. We can add that in.
I think that's good. Alan,
Or
Yeah, I don't
just
know
say,
why, I don't know why you would do that, and change that, Steve. I have been on both sides of this equation as a superintendent, as well as on a select board and a school committee. Actually, 3 sides of this. And this works really well because it's the, however many are remaining on the school committee, whether it be 1, 2, or 3, I guess it'd be a problem if there were none, but not really. And then it's the select board. And so they each have an equal vote. They get together. I like the fact that it's posted and everyone's, alerted to the fact that there is going to be a new person appointed. But this language to me works well. It is what it is. I wouldn't want to just, there's one school committee member say, okay, well, they're out, and you just have the select board do it. So, I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. It's however many school committees are there and the select board, and then they take a vote. Generally, there's a process that the select board sets up, or there's something that talks about, they would interview the candidate, the person who's interested would put their reasons for why they're interested in the position to run, and that would be given to the select board and the school committee, and then they would interview the candidate and review their statements, and then take a vote. So it's worked well, but apparently not everywhere, is what I'm hearing from Catherine.
let's
the
Steven,
simple,
on real quick.
the simple,
Could I just record, Alan, what we're talking about is you've got Warwick and Leiden with one member. If one of those, say Leiden, that member resigns, leaves, or whatever, there's no school committee member. So therefore, it would be by just the selectmen. That's what I think Catherine was pointing out, that it would be just the selectmen that would be appointed. But if you were the other towns, in Gill or in Montague or Berniston, they have multiple members. So it's 2 towns, I think it's 2 of them that have just one member. Just to clarify, then it would be strictly by the selectmen. That one member you don't have a member. That one member resigns, leaves, or dies, whatever. Then
All right, thank you, Catherine. I understand. I agree with her.
Yeah, that's what I understood well. It's a clarification, not a material change. Matt.
If we wish to make a change, which I don't think is necessary, but I could understand a desire to clarify. And I would suggest for the matter of elegance, simply adding a comma after "and," the 2 words "if any," and then another comma.
that can be done.
okay.
I just love lawyers and their commas.
Tucker, you had your hand up?
were you calling on me?
Yes.
I was gonna suggest the if any language too. And the remaining committee members, I would put it after members, comma, if any, comma.
Great.
Let's try to move this along. So what is our next step here, Mac?
We'd like to take a preliminary vote on this whole section too.
Mr. Chairman, did you agree to adding that language about the copies? Is that been added, agreed to, post films?
The small clarification change makes sense to me.
Yeah.
No, I'm talking about the added language that
Oh.
DESC wants to see.
I defer to Desi, unless anyone else here has any discussion on this.
I can tell you if it goes in without it, they'll come back and tell us to put it in, so I might as well.
It sounds
Put
like a
it
plan.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree.
So moved.
Okay, so
On the
Moved.
entire thing with the added language there from Desi.
Thank you,
Yes.
Greg.
so
You want to vote, roll call vote on the whole thing now?
Yes.
roll call vote.
Yep.
Stephen Nestenpower,
Can you take this off the screen?
Yes.
Thank you.
Tupper Brown,
He's on mute.
Sorry, yes.
Catherine DiMatteo,
Yes.
Dorinda Bell Up,
Yes.
Matt Lord,
Yes.
I vote yes. Alan Genovese,
Aye.
Jessica Foote,
Yes.
right. That
Great.
is-
And me, yes. I never voted.
All right.
Uh,
I
I
just-
just went out.
I note that it is 3 minutes of 8, but is it possible we could just take a look at section 3? And if we can't deal with that in 5 minutes, we'll put it off till next time.
No, let's take a look at it real quick and
Yes.
note that we should briefly look at it and people should review this in the interim before the next meeting.
This is section on students. I'll just start before you get it up there, Greg. Oh, there you go. We've removed this. You'll see it's deleted. The school will not be closed permanently without going through the process outlined in section 4. We just removed that because the wording is in section 4. We're not deleting the concept. It just doesn't need to be here under students, because
Right.
that's talking about schools.
Yep.
So that whole section about the process to close a school it will be in there in the next section. So that's really
My question for Mars, I think, is are there any points in here that we should be considering specifically?
I don't think so. It's pretty the special education part. It's part of the law, so the school has to deal with that. And the school choice is not really appropriate here either. So we think this is pretty perfunctory.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't think we have to debate it because this is exactly the way it is. And so I would just move that we accept this section 3 as presented.
Second.
Again.
All right, let's do a roll call vote,
Wait, can I ask a question just to clarify before we do vote?
please.
So to understand from the Mars consultants, the language that has been excised here has been done so because it's superfluous. All of those issues are already covered under state law or some other section.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any
That
other
was
discussion?
yeah.
Any other questions or comments? All right, I'm gonna do a roll call vote. Stephen Nestenpower,
Yes.
Tupper Brown,
I don't see him. Did he leave?
no,
Unmute,
he's still here.
unmute, Tupper.
Tupper,
Oh, there he is. He moved.
Yeah, I said yes.
great. Greg Snedeker,
Yes.
Catherine DiMatteo,
Yes.
Dorinda Bell Up,
Yes.
Matt Lord,
Yes.
I, Chris Hinkle, say yes. Al Genovese,
Aye.
and Jessica Foote.
Yes.
Excellent.
All right, we've accomplished. You have accomplished a lot tonight. That was a tough section to get through. So we'll be sending you out several new sections for the next meeting, and I think you'll find that they will go a little easier. But you did a great job tonight. Thank you very much.
And when is the next meeting?
And end of July, I think.
And Catherine, you have your hand up too, Chris. I don't know
July
if you can see that.
24th is the next scheduled meeting.
Catherine, did you have anything to say?
Yes, I just wanted to make sure we get corrected copies of what we voted on tonight.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes. July 24th is the next meeting.
Thank you. And I echo your comments. This was really, really good work. It took a while, but the conversation was terrific. So I thank everybody on behalf of the planning board.
Excellent. I think everyone as well. Does anyone want to move to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
All right. And it's a roll call vote.
Yeah.
Stephen Lesser-Power. Is that a yes or no?
Yes.
Tupper Brown?
Yes.
Wait, let's let Jane come in so she
Yes.
can
Oh, is Jane joining?
turn. Jane's coming
Oh, okay. Let's wait for Jane.
in. Just finish with her.
Yeah, you be like,
And did Greg and then Catherine Deo
Yes,
and then Dorinda Bell up,
yes.
Matt Lord,
I,
Chris Hinkle is yes, Alan Genovese,
Aye.
Jessica Foote,
Yes.
and for Jane Dutcher who just joined us, we're voting to adjourn. You're allowed to abstain, but
Or you can vote.
or you can vote.
I'll just abstain.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
thank you, thank
great
you.
night.
Thank you.
Great prep and great meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.